I conducted a poll on my channel posing the question as to which vocation is the best for crushing giant foes and why. As you can see, the majority of those chose Thief. If you've played this vocation, then you see why. But that doesn't mean the other vocations aren't good in that regard. Now, I didn't include the Trickster, Mystic Spearhand, nor the Warfare for obvious reasons. But let's dive into this subject so that we can fully understand the best way to crush giant foes, so no matter which vocation you decide to choose, you'll succeed. Before Dragon's Dogma 2 came out and I actually got a hands-on experience with the separate vocations, I had my assumptions as to which one was the best for slaying these giant foes. I thought it was the Warrior simply because of the many changes and upgrades the Warrior received for the sequel, because it's a returning vocation from Dragon's Dogma, the original, that specializes in burst melee damage. They are comparable to fighters, being purely martial classes that fight in melee range. Though they can sport heavy armor and are healthier than many vocations, they aren't considered a true tank due to the lack of shields. But to make up for it, they deal heavier burst damage with their two-handed weapons and have skills that hit multiple enemies in one swing. That being said, warriors can literally destroy giants simply by standing in front of them, staggering them consistently while absorbing their heavy attacks. This sounds very desirable for sure, but not everyone prefers this method. Some may want to approach the fight from range, or others might like to climb atop these giant foes. The point is, everyone's combat style is different, so the devs have made it so that not one vocation style is better categorically than the other. Instead, each vocation has its own advantages and disadvantages when it comes to this. Like the Warrior, being that they swing so slow, seems to really not be worth it to climb the giant's back, but only when they're knocked on their backs to take advantage of climbing atop to hit those weak spots. But that's definitely not the case when it comes to the Thief. And here's where the advantage of agility comes into play. This actually shocked me. It's why in the poll I conducted, so many players chose this vocation, and here's where they shine. Thieves can literally climb all the way to the head of a giant while utilizing literally 0 stamina. This means that all the stamina will be used to dish out as much damage as possible to the giant's weak spot, scoring all kind of critical hits. The only issue arises when climbing spiked armored giants. But aside from that, this definitely has its appeal, and I see why so many players prefer this method. And while the Thief's dodge mechanic doesn't have iframes, I meaning invincibility frames, where you can dodge, and no matter what, if they hit within your hitbox, if you dodge in time, you'll be invincible and just dodge it. We don't have those in Dragon's Dogma 2, but despite that, it can definitely be an effective tool for evading damage when timed correctly and used strategically. Now, there's one great advantage that the Thief has as well. He's one of the best classes that have a good chance to cut off a Medusa's head when she's at her optimal strength, which effectively ends the boss fight and gives you a preserved Medusa head, which you could then use to petrify your foes by turning them into stone. This brings me to the next vocation, the other vocation that can do this as well, the Fighter. I thought initially that the more strength one has, the easier it'd be to climb atop giants. Strength is an attribute that fighters thrive in, but every time I attempted to do this with the Fighter, almost all of my stamina is used up before even getting to the top. So this strategy is very inefficient. They're a lot better at holding on than climbing, if that makes sense. But you might want to hear me out, because fighters are special in these situations in other ways. Fighting giants in general, they have something that no other vocation has or can. This is the shield. It's way more formidable than you think because it can block almost anything. At first, I assumed that the ogres, the minotaurs, the cyclops attacks were unblockable. I mean, come on, think about it. Do you actually think that when initially seeing an ogre swing a club at you that you can block it? So naturally, I just either take the hit or dodge at the right time. But I was wrong. And you can block even the attacks when they jump and sit on you, or in this case of the Minotaur's charge with his horns. All of these attacks can be blocked with the shield. This is insane. So when it comes to strategy regarding facing giants with the Fighter, it's a very balanced approach that has a very solid base to easily take them out if played right by using counterattacks and defense. Not saying that you can't climb atop them, it just requires more timing and strategic maneuvering in that regard. By the way, if you want to check out my fighter build, I made an ultimate fighter build. It's going to be linked at the end of this video and in the description. It's awesome. Check it out. But let's talk about the archer now. And to me, it makes no sense climbing when using this vocation. There's actually one skill in the weapon skill tree that you can unlock where you can climb the giant and then you take out an arrow and stab the giant with the arrow. I'm like, they just did this just to include the archer in doing something like that. It's pretty whack. I don't see the point of it, but I haven't used it. Maybe it's effective, maybe it's not. But when I started using this class, the precision is way better than I thought. Like, I'm actually working on a build for this, but man, when you pinpoint those weak spots, the damage is crazy. You just have to have patience and aim to pull it off in a timely manner, because, you know, they're moving around sometimes and you can't necessarily get those weak spots like you thought you would be. But as I'd level the archer up, the damage would get increasingly more as I'd progress. So for this, it's straightforward. Use the steady aim and just point at the Cyclops' eye or Minotaur's head, etc. and you're golden. Just make sure you zone the opponent and you don't get yourself caught up too close, or you might get yourself killed. Now the Sorcerer is another vocation that really shines in this subject of giant slaying, because they have spells that are so strong that they literally can kill a giant with one spell. I've witnessed this against a 4 health bar griffin, and it really made me realize the power sorcerers possess. So yeah, not much explanation goes with this. It's just that they're top tier when it comes to it. Finally, the mages are similar to sorcerers, but not as effective in my experience. I might be wrong, but from what I've experienced with mages, all I use them for is support. Healing, you know, to heal me and cast deterrent spells wherein the damage is secondary to the support. But you can tell me down in the comments if I'm wrong, if they are as effective as sorcerers. I don't really know. I just use them as support from my main character. Overall, when it comes to what the best vocation is in terms of giant slaying, it's really your preference. It just depends on how you want to accomplish this. I personally like the way that thief and archers perform. Tell me down below what your favorite method to taking these giants out is. And if you enjoyed this conversation, a like would be super appreciated. Also subscribe if you're new here. I'll see you in the next one. Be right out.